we got Sir Charles Barkley, who is going off on fraternities and men in fraternities. I was actually watching this when it happened live during Inside the NBA after a couple of playoff games last week. They got onto the subject of fraternities because Shaq is completing
You know
something with
Shaq.
Alabama. Yeah, Shaq is doing something with Alabama State University, and so he was like, "Call me Doctor O'Neal." And Shaq is a member of Omega Psi Phi, and Charles Barkley was roasting him basically for being a member of a fraternity, saying that fraternities are just for losers, essentially. Charles Barkley said only losers join fraternities. So this says Charles Barkley is not about the frat life. Only losers join fraternities. Charles Barkley is never one to hold his tongue, and now the NBA Hall of Famer has made it clear that he's not a fan of fraternities. The former Houston Rocket gave his thoughts on Greek life during a recent episode of Inside the NBA after Shaquille O'Neal references Omega Psi Phi Brotherhood. I don't want to be in no fraternity, Barkley said, calling them a bunch of damn loser dudes getting together all the time. Only losers join fraternities. At that point, Kenny the Jet Smith jumped into the conversation and praised what fraternities do in their communities, but Barkley had already made up his mind. Knock it off. If they were that good, you'd join. When Smith responded by saying he didn't have the time to be in a fraternity back when he was in college, Barkley threw another shot. You were busy. Yeah, only losers join fraternities. After hearing that Michael Jordan was in Omega Psi Phi with Shaq, Barkley doubled down on his stance, suggesting that MJ had distanced himself from the organization. He might be a member, but he ain't doing nothing with those bums. Public Enemy legend Chuck D took to X to weigh in on Barkley's comments, responding to a video of the conversation. Crazy LOL. I went through my college years fighting frats, working with them and fighting them. As a young head, I was definitely Charles. Spike also knew it on school days. We all grew afterwards, but yeah, Charles was real on it. So yeah, here's a video of Charles roasting fraternities. Let's see here. All right, so clearly there's no love lost between Charles Barkley and fraternities. Yeah, so a bunch of losers getting together all the time and bums. What do you think about Charles's scathing critique of fraternities?
Hey man, I gotta say I'm surprised about this take because I would have assumed like if this was a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire thing, and they'll say, uh, you know, which fraternity was he a part of, and they just list three of them, and four of them was like he's not one. I probably would have said he's not one because this is a trick question. Why would you say he's not in one? Yeah. But still, nevertheless, I'd be like, I don't know, man. He looked more like a Sigma, and then but yeah, I would have assumed he was already a part of one. So that's why this took me by surprise. And for him to just dunk on him like that, it's pretty noble of him to do such a thing. Now, me personally, all right, I don't want to call these guys losers, okay? Because who knows if we have any watchers here. But I will say I don't think they're all losers. I'll say that. But I think a large majority of them are. I think some guys really use it for it's what it's turned into as a large networking thing, so you can get on and get work outside of college. I think some guys actually use it for that and that alone. But then there's people that use it for all the other reasons, and that's for the freak offs. That's for notoriety. It's kind of like getting a badge for some people who were getting bullied in school. You get a badge and you get a gun, and now you're Mr. Tough Guy. It's the same thing I felt like with certain fraternity dudes, where it's like, man, what's your whole thing? But now you join this, now you're Mr. Freak Off, now you're this, that, now you're cool, now you got status. So to me, I think that a lot of those people that join those things would also do anything to get on in life. Because, well, they kind of, and most of them, if not all, they kind of make you do damn anything to get on. and I think that's bogus. I don't think that's I don't think that's standing on business as a human. So um, if Charles Barkley was getting at what I basically said in long form, but he just got to the point and said that they're lame or losers. I guess I tend to agree with Sir Charles here. All right, because yeah, I think that's a good analogy of what I basically was trying to get at. That Shaq still sticking his tongue out at 50 plus years old, then telling Chuck he don't know what he don't know nothing about that. Uh, and then we have his airness, himself, Sir Mike is actually a Q. I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I did not know
And
that.
but that which speaks to Charles' point and my point that some guys just use it for what they needed to use it for, and they got out of there. And then there's the guys parading around, stomping and clapping their hands, like Shaq, who's clearly in it for all the right reasons, I'm sure. So, what are your thoughts, man, on Sir Charles Barkley calling out fraternities, basically saying that those guys are losers? What are your thoughts, bro?
Yeah, loser may be a bit of a strong word. I won't say loser. That seems harsh. But what I will say is I went to college for a total of 7 years. 4 years undergrad, 3 years in grad school. Um, Came across a lot of guys who were members of fraternities, obviously. The vast majority of the guys who joined fraternities during my time in college did it to get women. That's the majority. I would say 90% of the guys that joined fraternities who I knew of were doing it motivated by the pursuit of women. It wasn't really about networking. It wasn't really about family legacy. It wasn't really about history. It wasn't really about
Work in the
professional.
community.
Yeah, it wasn't really about professional aspirations. It wasn't really about professional aspirations or community service. They were doing it because they wanted to get women. And you know, apparently joining a fraternity made it easier to get women. And I don't deny that. It probably did. Women, especially in college, do tend to be enamored by men who have social status, especially in college, because in college, nobody really has money like that. So, in college, it's basically, how good are your social skills? And if speaking as a man who is, like in terms of getting women in college, which by the way, for anyone who's never been to college, uh, there is no there is perhaps no period of time in which it is easier in life for a man to get women than in college. It is easy to get women when you're in college. So
Those were interesting times.
yes, so much so that if you are not getting women in college, you either have very horrible social skills or you're doing it on purpose, or you don't like women. Those are the only three reasons that can explain why a guy who is in college isn't getting women. Hell, when you're in college, you can just kind of stumble upon women by accident. That's how easy it can be. Like you can just not even be trying, and it just happens by mistake. Like that's literally how easy it is. So, I feel like for a lot of guys who join frats in school, 90% of them, they were doing it because they were experiencing difficulty with women and wanted to join a fraternity to elevate their cachet socially so that it can be easier for them to get women. Now, if you want to characterize that pathology as loser, that's up to you. I'm not going to use that word. I am merely going to explain that in my experience, the motivation to join frats didn't have anything to do, well, I won't say anything. For the majority of those guys, community service, legacy, career aspirations, and networking were all secondary motivations. In fact, They were tertiary motivations because motivation number one and motivation number two was to get chicks. Those were the primary driving forces. Those are the primary motivating factors behind guys getting women. Um, and so you can take that for what you will. Some people might characterize that as loser behavior. That is certainly open to interpretation. But I do think that there is something to be said for the guys who were able to successfully navigate college from a social standpoint, devoid of the merits of joining a frat. I hold those guys in higher esteem than the guys who did it by joining fraternities. There might have been some ancillary benefits that came from joining on the back end, but the motivation going in was women solely. And so, because of that, I do kind of put that into its own category of whatever you want to describe it. Um, you know, however you want to describe it. I don't want to put the label on it. Barkley said loser, so if we are going to go by Barkley's, calculus describing that as loser, then so be it. But I do weight guys who are able to socially navigate college effectively without having to join a fraternity in high regard compared to guys who felt as though they had to join a fraternity in order to make that happen for themselves. But my overall point with this situation is all of that stuff that Kenny Smith was talking about is whatever. But most guys in college, and this is just my personal opinion based on my individual experience, a lot of those guys who joined those frats, they were doing it for the women and for nothing else.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the dudes I knew, they was, and I didn't know. I just knew of them or play basketball or something like that. They went into the freak offs. That's what they were. That's what it was all about. And you can tell that when you go to their parties. And yes, I didn't go to their parties. They would like host. That's part of their thing is being club promoters nowadays too. They don't even really, get on education much. They're actually just club promoters while they're all in college. So yeah, I'll go to some of their juice parties and stuff. And yeah, man, hey, when they stop the songs and they play their little stroll music and they get the Fresh Prince of Bel Air and Different World clapping up in there, yeah, man, the girls was going crazy. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? The not all of them, the ones that's about that life.
Well, the ones that's in the building, because
Well,
only the ones who are the ones who go are about that life. So yeah,
yeah,
all of the girls there were clapping it up and loving it because they're the ones who. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they love it? Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
that's true. I mean, but I saw the ones that just stayed on the wall. They didn't go rush to the middle
Yeah,
like the real ones do. The ones that's actually gonna be at the party later. You
those
know,
were those were the ones that were just shy about it. But they all
fair
they
enough.
all they all was they all was into it. It's just some were a little more aggressive than others.
Look at me over here, white knighting for these. Hey man, but nevertheless, bro, like I it's to each their own. It was one of those things for me while I was in school, man. I thought it was personally like not it. You weren't gonna catch me doing none of that stuff that they was doing at those venues. And from what I hear on the ground floor for most of that stuff, I wouldn't do what it takes to even be in that thing. Me personally, I don't need to pay for more ways than one for brotherhood. So that's all on them. And honestly, when it comes to fraternities and stuff, saying I don't had a long standing beef with them anyway. At least when it comes to the part of these guys actually being in very prominent positions all over the country. And they love to brag about how much they have people in the professional space, the corporate space, the government space, and all this other stuff here. And yet and still the conditions are still the same. And these fraternal orders have been in over our communities for the past century, and there's nothing to show for it but parties.
Exactly. That's why I think they mostly stand nowadays for social prestige.
Yeah,
Like that's what they stand for. All of that other flowery stuff, I don't give it. Like no, y'all ain't doing nothing. Like they're not doing anything. It's just social prestige. Trust and believe. Even at 30, 40, 50 years old, the OGs and the old timers, they're still doing freak offs. They're just doing it for grown folks. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, none of that stuff ever stops. So it was really for the social benefit of it, more so than actually impacting people or communities in any positive way. It's all about social cachet.
Yeah, man. Would you tell me Shaq ain't going to a freak off? He bout that. He bout that, man. So nah, man. So you know, I agree with Chuck, but Chuck is at the uh I'll pass gas in public age, just extremely loud ripping it because who cares, Man, when I used to work at Target, man, back in the day, I worked next to an old folks home, and they will always come up in there, and they didn't care who was in the aisle, how many people, if it's just me and they're standing right next to me, they'll just rip it and walk the hell off. And I started getting offended. I'm like, are they targeting me? But then at some point, I was like, no, 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 no. They're just at that age, but they don't give a damn what you think. So Charles Barkley is at that age where he doesn't give a damn. He's not gonna wax poetic about how they're losers. He's just gonna say that they're losers. So
Yeah.
hey, man, shout out to Chuck on this one. Yeah, I agree with him, man. I guess I gotta say I agree.
Yeah, I won't say loser, but I get the sentiment. you know,
You still care, huh?
yeah. Hey, look, man. Y'all ladies don't. Well, some of y'all. Well, I'll take that back. Ladies do know the power that they have over men. Y'all women have extraordinary power over men, enough to make guys have to endure weird, ritualistic, borderline homosexual activities in order to join an organization just so that they can get you. Like y'all, the power of the woman is an amazing thing, bro. Because if you remove women from the equation, how much do you think there would be a drop off of guys joining frats?
Hey, man, I think some of those guys join it because of those uh some of those
Okay,
activities.
but would there not be a drop off still if you
Yeah,
remove
because
if
a lot of them go, they dabble in both worlds. So if there's a place where they can dabble in both worlds freely, like they're allowing, they'll just be
well,
over there.
all right,
You
well, I'm gonna say
know?
I'm saying that if you remove women from the equation, I personally believe a lot of guys would. I think there would be a significant drop off
Yeah, they'll find
of of
something else.
of
Those
of,
guys.
of, jo- of joining fraternities because
I
I
agree.
think the overwhelming motivating factor, the driving motivating factor, is women. Women have a profound impact on men's behavior and decision. And I know I'm not saying nothing new. We all know this. They know this. That's why they do what they do. They are well aware of the power that they have over us. But man, to see it in the flesh it isn't any less remarkable to witness it. And man, to hear, I know a few guys who went through it and did it. Like you, I wasn't really friends with a ton of guys who did frats. Um, I just knew them via association, but
Mhm.
some of them I was pretty cool with enough for them to kind of tell me what they were going through, and I was just like, "Is it worth it, bro?" I really hope it's worth it because they were really going through all that for women, which is crazy because it's like you can still get them without it, but it is what it is, man.
Hey, man, I heard at those freak offs, bro, that you know what I'm saying. It's a Diddy party.
No, it is, and I know that for a fact. I'm not gonna mention her name, but when I stayed in my place in Tallahassee, there was a girl who stayed in the building adjacent to mine, and we were cool and we would talk. She went to the same school as me, and she told me that, and I'm not making this up. She told me she went to a Q Dog event. The Q Dog event was called the Dog Show. Now, I don't know if they still I don't know if it's still called that. This was early 2000 teens. She was like, "Yeah, I went to the dog show. It was a Q event," and she described what was going on, and it was very Diddy Party esque.
Yeah,
Trust me.
one hundred
Yeah.
percent, bro.
So yeah, it goes down for sure, and that is why they're joining. They're joining for
Yeah,
that. They're not.
exactly.
They get miss me with this whole career, professional networking. My dad did it, and so it's a family. No, you're doing it because you want to be able to go to that dog show, and
That's it.
y'all and y'all know it.
You
So
a
I
freak,
hear
your dad a
Barkley.
freak.
Yeah, I hear Barkley. I hear him 100%, man. She told me she was at the dog show. She just opened a random like door to like the, you know how like in them apartments,
Yeah.
the washer and dryer. There's the closet door that you open. Yeah,
Yeah.
she opened the closet door and there was Diddy partying going on right there on the washer and dryer. Like just all
Casual.
it was flying all over the place. So that's the allure of fraternities, in my opinion,
Yep.
and nothing more.
Hey, y'all have fun out there, man. Ain't no shouts out for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no shout out for no Diddy parties,
Yeah,
man.
I know it's gonna be some people who gonna comment that join frats. No, it ain't like that. Y'all don't know what y'all talking about. All right, well then tell that to the people who told me this, because I'm not making any of this stuff up.
Nah, bro,
So
they know they ain't clapping it up, bro. What else they supposed to say? Oh man, the whole narrative's out now. It's too late. So hey man, it is what it is, man. But hey, y'all let us know what y'all think down in the comment section, guys. Do y'all feel like fraternity guys are just straight up losers? Or do you think it's a little bit more nuanced than that? And honestly, would you join a freak off?
yeah,
Let us know down in the comment section.
and of course I am speaking from a man's perspective. I don't know anything about sororities or anything like that.
Yeah,
We are speaking from a man's perspective with the frats. And listen, like I said, I hope it's worth it for you to go through that and join those organizations. You better be getting more action than me, because if I'm getting more action than you and I didn't go through that, then you are hustling backwards in more ways than one. I better not be getting more action than you when you join that stuff.
Oh, unbelievable.